Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Langer at the Mic, this draft show, NFL draft show edition of Langer at the Mic. And we're joined by a very special guest today. He's been a guest a couple of times already on the show. He is an Eagles fan, but more importantly, he is a scout with Blue Chip Scouting. He is Mike Hrynyshyn. How's it going today, Mike?
Good, man. Always a good time to hop on the show. You and I go way back. Always a good time to talk about both of our teams. We both of our teams this year were a factory of sadness. So the draft really came early for us because our season was pretty much over, heading into that last month of the season. And I love dropping some knowledge when I can. I watched, you and I were talking about this before we went live. Almost 300 players. I actually started watching this year's class before last year's draft even happened. So it's gonna be fun. 12 full months of work finally paying off. I'm looking forward to. We're doing 3 days of live draft streaming. We will be covering every single pick on YouTube. Can't wait.
Mike is honestly one of the hardest working and most honest and best draft guys. He does the draft 365 days a year, 24/7. Yeah, like you can honestly just check out his work at MikeH_draft on Twitter. And again, he's a member of the Blue Chip Scouting team that is at Blue Chip Scout on Twitter as well. And once again, Mike, thank you so much for joining the show.
Absolutely, man.
Let's get right into it. Let's start right from the top with the quarterbacks in this one. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we're going to talk more specific to the Dallas Cowboys, a little bit to the Philadelphia Eagles as well, because like you said, Mike is an Eagles fan. But let's also talk a little bit about the quarterbacks here. And I have to admit, first and foremost, to saying that I am on the record on my podcast back in November
before
the Cowboys played the Eagles, or like in October, it was like week 5 or week 6, I think, when Ben DiNucci started, right? Yeah, remember we had a conversation about Dak had just gotten injured and there was still the whole contract situation in the air. And I am on record of saying that at that point in time that it would be worthwhile for the Cowboys to look at Justin Fields, because again, with the contract and with Dak being hurt, and also at the time, in my defense, Justin Fields was on a pace of throwing more touchdown passes than incompletions. So
yeah,
but then he came back to earth quickly, but had a really good not national championship game, but national championship semifinal. And now he's in he's in about a handful of really good quarterback prospects. So Mike, how do you see Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones all landing?
Okay, well, let's start with the easy one. That's Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence is the highest graded quarterback I've ever evaluated, and just for clarity, I started scouting back in 2014, so that was Teddy Bridgewater's season. So he is ahead of Joe Burrow, who took that mantle last year. And before that, it was Teddy Bridgewater. So it took a long time for someone to actually top Teddy's evaluation coming out, then Burrow, and then Wilson. I think he would have been the number one pick in last year's class. He would have been the number one pick in the 2019 class by a lot. And he
what
would
about
have been
Patrick Mahomes? What about 2017?
See, he was still in high school. Mahomes was a big question mark coming out back in 2017, just because he was all projection. It was very much needed to sit, learn. A lot of what we see with Josh Allen, the same thing could be said a year earlier with Patrick Mahomes. He needed a ton of time, ran an offense that just wasn't conducive, and landed in the absolute perfect spot behind Alex Smith and learning from Andy Reid, one of the most respected offensive minds in league history. So Mahomes is a unicorn. Lawrence is a different type of unicorn.
Yeah, and obviously I asked you in the sense of like comparing them as prospects, not high school Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Patrick Mahomes, but yeah, just
I mean that, like, when you look at 2019 and 2020, like sophomore Trevor Lawrence would have been the number one pick. Freshman Trevor Lawrence in 2019 would have been the number one pick. That's what I mean. Like, he was he's been the guy in college football since he first stepped on campus. He had a kind of rough start to 2019, bounced back in a major way, helped them almost win a national championship, and then they ran into the LSU juggernaut. This year, he was almost perfect throughout the regular season. And then he just ran into a more perfect opponent across from him on the other sideline, which was Justin Fields, who was my number 2 quarterback. And if you want to talk about how neck and neck these guys truly are, like, listen, like I said, Trevor Lawrence, best quarterback I've ever evaluated, being talked about as the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, maybe Peyton Manning, like that level of God tier good. Justin Fields is tied with Joe Burrow. So he's tied for the second highest grade I've ever given a quarterback. And Justin Fields gets kind of crapped on a little bit by the media, and I don't understand why. I mean, I could probably guess, but I won't delve into it. And I think you and I both know what I mean by that. But when it comes to Justin Fields, he's talked about it. Oh, well, you know, how's his processing speed? And you know what, to be honest, his processing speed is okay. It's not the greatest, but he's as talented of a thrower as Trevor Lawrence, maybe just a smidge underneath him. And they always talk about how he had a bad game in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern, but they seem to forget that the very next game he had, which was against Clemson in the college football playoff, he went up against one of the best defensive coordinators in Brent Venables at Clemson, who had given him problems the year before in the college football playoff, and he tore up Clemson's defense, which will have maybe not as many star talented players as they have in years past, but next year, Clemson's probably going to have 2 or 3 first rounders just in that secondary. They are fantastic, and he tore them apart. He broke his ribs in that game and kept playing, and then played the next week in the national title game. He's a tough son of a bitch. I would want him on my team. Absolutely love the kid. Yeah, I think that people are really overthinking Justin Fields, and they really want to pick out his weaknesses without talking about his strengths.
So let me stop you right there for a sec, Mike. So my heart goes out to New York Jets fans because I have family. I have my uncle, I have my cousin that is they're New York Jets fans, and so they're at number 2. And a lot of what I'm seeing in mock drafts and what I'm hearing is that Zach Wilson is getting mocked to the Jets.
I was hoping,
so,
yes. I was hoping.
So why would the Jets want Zach Wilson over Justin Fields if Justin Fields is as good as you're saying he is?
At the end of the day, it's apples and oranges. Unfortunately, they're very different players. Justin Fields is 6'3", 235 pounds. I've compared him to Dak Prescott. I mean, they're very similar players. I think that if Dak Prescott had played an offense like this in college, he would have gone a lot higher and hadn't had his DUI. But when it comes to Zach Wilson, we're looking at someone that's a lot like Johnny Manziel, but without all of the sideshow circus crap that came with Manziel back in 2014. Just absolute insanity. The problem is with Wilson and why I'm not as high on him. He's my 3rd ranked quarterback in this class. The reason why I'm not as high on Zach Wilson is he wasn't even the guaranteed starter at BYU heading into the season. I mean, he was having to fight for his job, and then BYU just kind of had a makeshift schedule of like Texas State one week. I think they faced Boise State. They faced some really weak competition and some pretty weak defenses. Boise State was the best team they faced during the regular season, and he was able to carve them up, and he put up just ridiculous numbers. And then he met a defense that truly honed in on taking away his best asset, which was Coastal Carolina, and they upset BYU because of that. Again, if you go back and watch Zach Wilson's best games and you go back and you watch Johnny Manziel, you can see where there's a lot of comparison. The reason he's being talked about with the Jets at 2 is because the offense, the offensive staff that's with the New York Jets is coming from the San Francisco 49ers coaching staff, and the Niners offensive staff absolutely adored Zach Wilson. So with those guys in place, it just makes so much sense that he's going to be the pick. I personally wouldn't do it, but I understand why. He's a perfect fit for that same style of offense.
Then what about Trey Lance and Mac Jones, of course? Are they worthy of top 10 picks, or are they just the classic case of quarterbacks getting overdrafted?
All right, so top 10, maybe not. And I'll start with Trey Lance first, because I actually do think there's a bit of a difference. So Trey Lance, I still have given a first-round grade. If I'm looking at my board right now, he came in at 16th overall out of 23 first-round grades. So we're talking about a mid first-round pick. I think that in the right system with the right coaching, he could have perhaps, his ceiling, if everything goes right, is Deshaun Watson. I actually think he's really good. He's incredibly raw, though. And much like back, a couple years ago when Josh Allen, who had pretty bad tape at Wyoming. I don't know if you remember watching his Wyoming
Oh, I
film.
remember. I know. I didn't watch his college tape, but I just know that Josh Allen, like in his, it took him a while to
Yeah.
become a
I
polished
mean,
passer.
Josh Allen got drafted in the top 10 despite having never had a season dating back to even high school completing more than 57% of his passes, which is, last I checked, very not good. Trey Lance didn't play this year. He had one showcase game because the FCS season got canceled. But back in 2019, he's at an absolute powerhouse program. North Dakota State, I believe, has won 7 out of 8 national championships at the FCS level. He
Same one as Carson Wentz, right?
Same one as Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz started that was either the beginning or in the middle of that just ridiculous stretch of national championships, which is still going on today.
Yeah, they're the Bama of that division, right?
Oh, absolutely.
North Dakota State. Yeah.
Yeah. Trey Lance, if I remember correctly, had 19 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions, and was also nearly a 1,000-yard rusher on the ground. As dynamic as it gets, and he's not built like a Lamar Jackson, where you would think where he's 6'3", 210 pounds. Trey Lance is like 6'4" and like 225, 230. He's big and he's fast and he's hard to bring down. And if you try, he's going to run you over. He runs a lot like an angry Josh Allen does as well.
So Cam Newton, basically.
Pretty much a smaller Cam, but he needs time to develop. He only, if I remember correctly, I'm just going to quickly check this because I put this out in an article and now I can't remember the exact number. But he's only thrown like 320 career passes. So
young at the position.
Exactly. 318. Yeah, 318 total passes. His one showcase game this year, he threw 2 picks, but those were his only 2 career picks. He's going to need to be in a situation where he can sit and develop and wait a year. A team like Atlanta would be perfect for him because they still have Matt Ryan and they don't need to start him right away. The worst thing that can happen to Trey Lance is he lands with a team where, great, you have to be our day one starter. Now let's talk about Mac Jones.
Yes, please.
I would love to know why Mac Jones is talked about as this top 10 player. I have him as a 3rd round grade. He's not good. You'll see NFL media absolutely drooling over Mac Jones, and there's no reason to do it. This happens usually in years like, think about 2019. We had Kyler, we had Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock. The NFL media is always going to try to create another first round prospect. Or the NFL will always talk up another one as well. We don't need to do that this year because we have 4 legitimate first round quarterbacks. We don't need a 5th in Mac Jones when he was surrounded by star talent, which is seen as a knock for players like Trey Lance at the FCS level and Justin Fields at Ohio State, but it's never mentioned for Mac Jones. His pro day, we were seeing media accounts tweet out that he was throwing darts and throwing absolute dimes in his pro day. First of all, there's no coverage, so there's no such thing as a dime against empty coverage. And 2, he's underthrowing those balls by like 5 yards, and the receiver has to come back to him. He doesn't have a very strong arm. He cannot make the same throws that a Justin Fields, a Zach Wilson, a Trey Lance, or Trevor Lawrence can. He is an okay athlete, but he's not great. Also, the one that's the 2 players at quarterback that are talked about in terms of having, questions about their commitment to the game or character or maturity issues are Justin Fields, who has never been suspended. He's never been arrested. He's never had any form of off-field issues. And Trey Lance, same thing. Mac Jones has 2 DUIs. There is no reason he should be talked about this highly. There are talks about him going as high as 3. I hope for all of my Niners friends that this does not happen. I will have some incredibly unsavory things to say live on stream if this happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, because is that whole narrative of Mac Jones going to the 49ers, that started by the Niners and their pre-draft meetings, and
I have no idea where
just
this
the
came
NFL
from.
media creating it.
So a lot of it comes from the fact that the Niners made this big trade from 12 to 3. And then like 2 days afterwards was the pro day of Ohio State with Justin Fields and Mac Jones. And because the NFL can only send a limited number of players, people to each, I think it's 3 representatives per pro day per team. It was John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and their top executive at Alabama watching, and not Ohio State. So Vegas odds went ridiculously in favor because everyone knows 1 and 2 at this point. Number 3, the Vegas odds were going incredibly high for Mac Jones. It's now tapered off. It went to Justin Fields last week. This week, it's actually Trey Lance that's the favorite to go 3. The third overall pick this year is an absolute mess. If you want to know my opinion on whether or not the Niners should pick Mac Jones at all, if we're hearing that Jimmy Garoppolo is not good enough to be the starter on this team and they can't win with Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that a good player comparison for Mac Jones is young Andy Dalton. If everything pans out for Mac Jones, he becomes Jimmy Garoppolo. So would you trade three first round picks to move up 9 spots to get if everything goes perfectly, the exact same guy you're replacing? This just doesn't make sense to me.
But what let me ask if this makes sense to you now. Jalen Hurts was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in the 2nd round.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, much to the I guess the despair of you and so many other Eagles fans, and it turned out to be maybe not the worst thing ever because of how Carson Wentz played in 2020. But let me ask you this: do you think with the Eagles having traded back, are they in the market for a quarterback to replace? Or to take over for Jalen Hurts? Would you compare? Do you think Mac Jones is better or not better than Jalen Hurts?
It's hard to say. They're very different players. I had a 4th round grade on Jalen Hurts last year, so I was not a big fan of the pick. I would rather, because of the mobility that Jalen Hurts brings, have Jalen Hurts. If the option was Jalen Hurts or Mac Jones, I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts, because if we're bad next year, we can just pick another quarterback. And I think next year's quarterback class could be pretty good. It's not going to be as star-studded, but I think that the depth is there, whereas the depth in this year's class falls off a cliff after Trey Lance, and that includes Mac Jones. Mac Jones is, after the 1st round, Mac Jones and Davis Mills from Stanford are the only 2 players that I would draft in the first 2 days. And then it's a drop to round 5 or 6. It's bad. It's a barren wasteland after that. This is not the year to need a quarterback, and too many teams need quarterbacks, which means that in day 2, we're going to see Kellen Mond from Texas A&M go. We're going to see Davis Mills from Stanford go. We're going to see Kyle Trask is the other one on day 2. Kyle Trask from Florida, he's going to go. Those are all going to be gone by probably pick 75, and then we're just not going to see one for a while. This is 2015 levels of bad depth.
Well, then again, just with or you could say it's also top heavy, not
it's very top heavy,
depth, but yeah, top heavy. And like you said, that 4th overall pick with Atlanta, whether they stay there, whether they go quarterback, whether they go not quarterback, whether they trade back, that is going to dictate so many things in this draft. And that's where now I want to get to the Dallas Cowboys and the 10th overall pick and what will be available to them. Now, to me, all right, here's where I am with the 10th overall pick. You don't plan on having 6 and 10 seasons very often, especially when Jerry Jones is the owner.
Well, now 6 and 11. There's a 17th game.
Yeah, 6 and 11. Yes, 17 game schedule. You have to account for that.
So
6
dumb.
and 11. It would have probably been 6 and 11 given how the Cowboys played, and not 7 and 10. But to me, it's simple: best player available. Because when you pick top 10, you have to choose the best player available, and to me, that is Kyle Pitts. By far.
I'm going to be honest; he's not going to be there.
Yeah, you're right. But we're going to get to that. So if Kyle Pitts happens to fall to 10, then he has to be the pick. But if he's not there, then to me, it goes Pitts, obviously, but then Patrick Surtain. And then if Penei Sewell makes it there, Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater in that order. What is your take, or how would you go at number 10 if you're the Dallas Cowboys?
So I've been trying to read as much as I can about insights into the Cowboys, draft habits, any information I can get. And I actually, Blue Chip Scouting started as a Cowboys-centric scouting website. So we know some people that have a bit of insight. And knowing what I know about the top 10 of the class overall, just a quick way of how this could go. We obviously know that Lawrence is going to go 1. We know that Zach Wilson is going to go 2. There's going to be another quarterback at 3. We don't know who that is yet. Maybe, but if it's Fields at 3, then probably Trey Lance goes 4, which would be the first time that that's ever happened where the top 4 have all been quarterbacks. then we're in for a treat, because that means that Mac Jones slides. There's really not a team that's, until the Patriots, that I could see needing a quarterback. 5, Cincinnati's either going to go Penei Sewell or they're going to go with Jamar Chase. I would go Penei Sewell. Indications are that they're going to go Jamar Chase. So Sewell continues sliding a bit. At 6, Miami, that's where Sewell comes off the board. If it's the only way I can see this happening, where, you mentioned Pitts, Sewell, and then obviously I'll throw in Chase as well. If Atlanta doesn't go quarterback at 4, it's going to be Kyle Pitts. So Pitts could be gone as early as 4.
And let's be clear also on Kyle Pitts. I do want to throw this out there. There are so many people saying, "Oh, Kyle Pitts, you won't go that high because he's a tight end."
He will. He will.
No, he's a freak. He is 6'6", sub 4.5 40. Like, he is not, and who cares if he's a tight end, because in today's NFL with NFL offenses, like, he'll line up in the slot, he'll line up from the tight end position, he'll line up maybe even out wide in the red zone. Like, he's a weapon. That's the bottom line.
His floor is Darren Waller, who's one of the top 5 or 6 tight ends in the NFL. That's his floor. His ceiling to me is Travis Kelce. He's my 3rd rated player in the entire class. He's the only tight end in college football
who runs almost like Calvin Johnson.
Yeah. He's the only tight end in college football history to win the Biletnikoff, which is actually the nation's best wide receiver award. So that says what it needs to. I compared him to a combination of Vernon Davis, Darren Waller, and Kellen Winslow, formed in a lab for the purpose of world domination. That was my actual official comp for him. He's that damn good. He will be gone by 10. I would say his floor is Miami.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna say next. So if he is gone by Miami, let's say at 6, then you're looking at Patrick Surtain, Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, and also J.C. Horn, who I like for his competitiveness and his fight and what he and the fact that Kyle Pitts mentioned that J.C. Horn was the toughest corner.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that.
But the grabbing and the penalties and the indiscipline for 10th overall, that scares me about J.C. Horn.
So I've narrowed it down at 10 to really, I don't think Sewell's going to be there. I don't think he should be there. I know the NFL likes Rashawn Slater more than Penei Sewell, which I don't understand. Penei Sewell is tied for the highest graded offensive tackle I've ever graded with Laramie Tunsil, who is also his pro comparison for me as well. Do I think he's going to be there? There's a chance. Should he? Absolutely not. Realistically, I would say your best bets are going to be one of those corners. It's either going to be J.C. Horn or it's going to be Patrick Surtain. I could see Jerry loving either of these guys because they're both sons of all pros, players. Obviously, Patrick Surtain's dad was an all-pro corner, and J.C. Horn's dad was Joe Horn, former all-pro wide receiver with the Saints. That alarm bells are going off for Jerry because he loves generational guys. He loves guys that are second generation NFL caliber players. He loves guys that have name brand with them. He loves stars, and both of these guys have the potential to be stars. You can't really go wrong with either of them. JC Horn feels like an old school 90s type of cowboy where he's going to kick your ass and he's going to remind you that he just kicked your ass because he's also the captain of the all chirp team. He's fantastic. The Auburn game, he shut down their best wide receiver and then took to Instagram posting his best plays from that game and was actually, putting in the hashtag tag number 17 and let him know I'm his daddy or something like that. Like I could see Jerry absolutely.
So I love that attitude from JC Horn, but then again, like I'm also imagining, I don't know, maybe not in the NFC East, but I don't know, like them playing the Packers and Aaron Rodgers throws, or even let's say the Bucks, because the Cowboys play the Bucks this year. Tom Brady, of course, overthrows Gronk or overthrows Chris Godwin by like 10 yards, but JC Horn is holding him back, and
that can be coached though. That can be coached.
So that's what I'm asking. So can it be coached?
Oh, it can definitely be coached. Because
do you think he'll be able to be good enough to, I guess, overcome that and learn to be better than that?
All it takes is an NFL defensive backs coach going, okay, in college, no matter what you did, it was a 15-yard penalty. In the NFL, if it's a 40-yard pass and you tackle the guy because you got too grabby, that's a 40-yard penalty. Like, and if you start getting flagged too much, you don't play, and there's your motivation to not have that happen. So I think that can be coached. I also trust the Cowboys secondary coach, even though that secondary was atrocious last year. They
brought a new one, Joe Witt Jr.
Yeah, they should be able to kind of coach out those things. And I mean, college corners get grabby anyways. If you actually wanted to study Patrick Surtain, his tape is incredibly boring to watch because no one in college decided it was a good idea to throw to him, and rightfully so, because when they did, they were punished for it.
And that's also what I like about, I've been seeing or reading on Surtain how it's like he's a high floor guy. Like you know what you're gonna get with Patrick Surtain. And to me, like in terms of best player available and need intersecting for the Cowboys at 10, like that's what it would be if they take Patrick Surtain. And I also would love to see one of the offensive tackles taken, whether it's Slater or Penei Sewell, because to me, best case scenario, Tyron Smith is healthy and you plug one of them in at left guard and you have another
if you're looking at filling in left guard, then the obvious choice is Slater, because he has the size, like he's a little smaller, a little bit more compact, shorter arms, easier transition. Whereas Penei Sewell, he's played left tackle all of his life, and it's just easier to keep him in a position where even right tackle may be a very difficult transition for someone, especially being only 20 years old. Slater's 22 or 23. So there's 3 years difference between those two. Slater's got a lot more experience on a lot more snaps, meaning that it should be an easier transition.
But I was also going to say, though, Tyron Smith is at this point almost guaranteed to miss a handful of games every year for the Cowboys. And
Slater played left tackle at Northwestern, so you'd be fine there.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, even if it's Sewell, he'll still get a chance to play left tackle. And Tyron Smith is already in his 30s, so he's not going to be a Cowboy forever at this point, like especially with how many injuries he's dealt over the course of his career. I love Tyron Smith. He's one of my, I just love how he's like that quiet, just I'm gonna F you up type of player, right? And but to me, getting Penei Sewell and just knowing that even if Tyron Smith goes down, the Cowboys have their generational left tackle to cover him for the next 10 years. I'd be very happy with that as well. But I have one more question for you, Mike, for the Cowboys at number 10. JOK or Micah Parsons?
It's too early for JOK, and there's a lot of questions about Micah Parsons that have nothing to do with his on the field play.
Yeah, I personally, I wouldn't want any of them, or maybe JOK, but I like to think that the Cowboys won't be in a position where they have to take either one of them.
The Cowboys are in a position where linebacker's not a need. And I know Jerry Jones.
Well, it's a sneak.
I know.
The Dallas media has been describing it as a sneaky need because you're likely, unless Jalen Smith returns to his 2018 form, you're likely cutting him. Leighton Vander Esch, you have to make a decision on his fifth-year option, and given his track record of being healthy, that might not be something that the Cowboys want to pick up.
Deep linebacker class too, so you don't need to go with one early.
Exactly.
But with Micah Parsons, listen, I love his on the field tape. Sorry, the cat got the way again. He seems to be getting in my way a lot.
What's the cat's name again?
Titan.
Titan. Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay, we'll count him as a guest on the show as well.
Exactly. He loves this type of stuff. But yeah, when it comes to Micah Parsons, on the field, he'd be probably like a top 3 or 3 to 5 linebacker I've ever watched. I think. Off the field, he scares me. Several suspensions back in high school, which hey, we've all been there. We've all been there. We all have our past from high school that we'd rather not have pop up at the world at our biggest job interview when we're 22 years old. However, when you're involved in a hazing scandal that involves a lot of really dark and disturbing things at Penn State, that may cause him to fall. I don't know if you've read into this. If not, I can direct viewers or listeners to this. You can hit me up. I will send you the article. I just don't feel comfortable talking about it on air.
And I think we also know what really happened at Penn State before that 10 years ago. We all know what happened. So we're not going to get into that, of course.
No. And the thing is, it's not quite that level of bad, but it's close. It's pretty bad. And it's the same thing that was brought up with someone that was drafted from Penn State last year in Yetur Gross-Matos. Same thing.
But from a football standpoint, though, the Cowboys, they have good athletes at linebacker right now, and they just brought in Keanu Neal, who's likely going to line up as the will linebacker in Dan Quinn's scheme. But to me, they don't have guys that are capable of being in good position and recognizing the play that's coming at them and reading and reacting and shedding off blocks. And to me, like you said, Parsons, great athlete, but he doesn't, from what I've read up on him, what I've heard of is just he doesn't have that recognition, that awareness just yet, despite how good athlete he is.
Lacking a little bit, instinctively.
But that's
JOK
also why, go ahead.
Is a great coverage linebacker, but he's only 215 pounds. If you want someone that, if the Cowboys are looking for instinctive linebackers, my personal favorite all instincts linebacker is Tony Fields, the second out of West Virginia, and you can get him in round 6.
Oh, but also who I was going to say is Nick Bolton. I'm a big fan of Nick Bolton.
Nick Bolton has the instincts. The problem is his change of direction skills aren't the greatest. So he's going to need to be used as shallow zone coverages or just go and get the football. Just pin your ears back and just go get it. I love Nick Bolton, but again, in an era where he didn't test athletically all that well, might be in for a bit of a slide. Also only measured in at 5'11", which may not seem like a lot, but that difference between 5'11" and 6 feet to the NFL is exactly what you would think it would be.
What about Jamin Davis?
My pro comp to him is a dog chasing cars. He has all of the athletic ability in the world. He's just an absolute monster. He single-handed, it was the Tennessee game and the Mississippi State game are his 2 best on film. He's great. He can fly all around the field. The problem is he has no idea what he's doing yet. He needs to sit and develop for like a year or 2, and then he can be good. The thing is, he has very little experience. He's an all-world athlete. In terms of football IQ and ability to read the field, and instincts, nothing's there yet.
And that is exactly what the Cowboys lack at linebacker right now, and that is what they would need if they were to draft one. But like you said, this is a deep linebacker class, and there's a whole bunch that they could get even on day 3, most likely. But a guy I do want to talk about, because going back to corner, is we mentioned Patrick Surtain, we mentioned J.C. Horn, of course, but moving on to day 2 and day 3, a guy who was at one point expected to be the top corner in this class, but now has fallen because of the back procedure and the fact that he opted out in 2020, is Caleb Farley. So how far do you think Caleb Farley is going to fall down on people's boards?
Personally, if I were, next week I'm doing a 2 different mock drafts, one of what I think will happen and what would happen if I were in charge of war rooms. Caleb Farley to me is, if I'm looking at my board, he's my 10th rated player in the class. For one, from all I've heard, he's going to be fine by the time training camp starts. So it's not like he's going to miss extended time. The issue comes, he's still very new to the cornerback position. He was a quarterback when he got to Virginia Tech. So he's only been playing the position for 2 years. Opting out actually isn't playing as big of a factor as people might think, because look at the top of this year's class. There were a lot of guys, Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater. Those guys are going to go top 10. Ja'Marr Chase. They didn't play this year. It hasn't seemed to affect them. It's the back that's going to scare people because of how, how tricky backs are. Backs, necks, ankles.
The fact that he got the procedure after not playing this year.
Yeah, and I mean, it did pop up. It was apparently a nagging injury that had been affecting him for a bit, and he just went, you know what? If it's going to affect me, I should probably get this checked out and fixed. Personally, I don't think that he falls below pick 40. I think realistically he's going to be taken before the end of round 1.
Because here's what I would do if I'm in the Cowboys position, at least on day 2, is, well, first of all, there's 3 ways that you attack it. Number 1 is just choose the best player available, which is what it always should be, but that at least in round 1. But when you get to day 2, day 3, you could be a little bit more selective and pick a little bit more based on the fact that, like, a guy that you would have wanted in round 1, but there's a better player available and now he's available to you at round 2, you take him. But also say, to me, I have 2 ways that I attack this second day, round 2, round 3 of the draft, is if Kyle Pitts falls to Dallas at number 10, obviously you take him, but you now have to focus on defense on day 2, and that is where I'm almost hoping that Caleb Farley finds his way to 44, and then I'm thinking defensive tackle at 75 and linebacker at 99 or some combination of the two. And basically come out of day two with a defensive tackle, corner, and linebacker. And then if Surtain or JC Horn are the pick at 10 overall, well, then you have a lot more flexibility to do best player available in the second round. But with that being said, at 44, 75, and 99, now that's the Cowboys pick. But that being said, there's one guy that I am eyeing, and that is defensive tackle Alim Mcneil.
I am so glad you mentioned Alim Mcneil.
I'm just mentioning everything right today, it looks like.
Okay, so I'm going to direct the viewers / listeners of this. Go on the Blue Chip Scouting YouTube channel. We did a 7-round mock with our former boss, Dalton Miller, who's a Cowboys writer at Pro Football Network now. We ran through a 7-round mock draft with him, and I mean, he is the world's biggest Alim Mcneil fan. And let me tell you why everybody at Blue Chip Scouting absolutely loves Alim Mcneil. He is maybe a little bit undersized for the position. He's about 6'1", just a shade under 6'2", about 315, 320 pounds. He's a former running back in high school. So he's got that level of athleticism. He can stuff the run. He can rush the passer. He had a fat guy touchdown this year that was absolutely glorious.
Pick six?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had a pick six. It was like a 37-yard interception return against Virginia. He doesn't have the highest ceiling. He's not going to be this, absolute, world beater at defensive tackle, but he's going to be someone that you can draft even in round 3, maybe even round 4. And he's going to be starting on your defensive line for the next 8 to 10 years if he stays healthy. And there are no injury concerns with him, which is even better. Looking at the Cowboys defensive line, there's a lot of questions. Listen, I love Neville Gallimore as much as the next guy because, who doesn't love Canadian bacon? The problem is, there's a lot of consistency questions with him coming out of Dallas. Tristan Hill can't stay healthy, was a bit of a reach when he was drafted as well. There's nothing really there to solidify that defensive line. I think that having someone like Alim Mcneil, who commands double teams every time he's out on the field, and he's a 3-down defensive tackle, he's going to free up more pass rushing opportunities for Neville Gallimore. He's going to command that extra blocker. He's going to be able to keep your linebackers at the second level cleaner. You're not going to see Jalen Smith be completely running around the field trying to avoid getting blocked because there's not going to be someone coming at him. Then it's up to him as to whether or not he wants to make the tackle or not. Leighton Vander Esch should be able to avoid, more contact from oncoming offensive linemen, which should hopefully help him stay healthier. This is going to help out your top, your front 7, and this is a 4th round pick potentially.
And that, to me though, that's the one problem, is that the Dallas Cowboys have historically not valued that under tackle, one technique position.
He's going to be a one tech, but he can play 3 tech no problem.
And that's what I love about, would you say 44 is a little rich for him, or would that be a good pick at 44?
44 is too rich. You can come around, honestly, from what I've heard and from people I've spoken to that have a bit more insight into how the NFL views players. Alim Mcneil is going to be available even at 99. Where so I'm thinking,
if he's such a good player, then how does he compare to other defensive tackles on your board?
So let me bring up my board. So Alim Mcneil comes in at defensive tackle 5 for me. The big thing with Mcneil that keeps him below the players ahead of him, which are Christian Barmore. By the way, I don't have a single 1st round defensive tackle. Christian Barmore from Alabama, J2 Fele from USC, Levi Onwuzurike, and Davion Nixon from Iowa. All 4 of those names that I just mentioned, pass rush upside. Alim Mcneil, not as much pass rush upside. That's why he's going to fall.
But that's okay, though, because the Cowboys they need someone in that middle. Like you said, to me, Alim Mcneil is a perfect fit for what the Cowboys are lacking on the defensive line, because you have pass rush in DeMarcus Lawrence. You have pass rush in Randy Gregory. You might even have some pass rush in Bradley Anae and Neville Gallimore, exactly. Or, again, Bradley Anae on the edge. You might, maybe not so much in Tristan Hill just yet, but to me, you need someone in that middle that, like you said, can make that can be an immovable force in the run game and give Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch or Keanu Neal make their lives much, much easier. And along those lines, though, backing up to Christian Barmore. Now, I have a question for you on Christian Barmore. I know he's the DT1 on a lot of people's boards, and I also would be reluctant to take him in the first round. But why doesn't Alabama trust him on running downs?
So he's not as strong at the point of attack. He doesn't exactly hold up well against strong road grading SEC offensive linemen. And Alabama is so deep at defensive tackle that they were able to rotate guys in. They had a 3-man rotation this year. So they were just able to flip him in with Brian Ray and Fedarian Mathis. So using Barmore to his strength, he got off to a very bad start because they were trying to use him as a 3-down defensive lineman. Then they started using him more in rotation. His gas tank, was staying longer and longer, meaning that the two run stuffers, LeBron Ray and Fedarian Mathis, who aren't in this class, they're next year guys. They're more run stoppers. Barmore can come in, rush the passer. Alabama's defense was pretty bad this year because of just the style of offenses that are now taking over the SEC. He's mostly a pass rush guy. That's just his specialty. Again, I'm not touching any of these defensive tackles in round 1. I know at least one is going to go. I could probably say with certainty 2 are going to go, maybe a third. Personally, though, I'm not touching any of them.
And there's actually one more defensive tackle I want to ask you about, because
Sure.
I've seen his name like as low as round 5 or round 6, as high as round 2 or round 3. Marvin Wilson.
Marvin Wilson, if you watch the 2019 film, he looks like a late first round, early second round type of player. When you watched the 2020 film before he opted out, there were times where he just looked straight up undraftable. There were some apparently, and this is well documented, there were some rifts between him and the new coaching staff heading into the season. You probably saw it after the, over the summer. There were apparently conversations that the coach had said, took place about leadership with the team that never took place. And Wilson was one of the people that outed him. He had a great first game against Georgia Tech, blocked 2, field goals. I think it was a field goal and an extra point attempt that he blocked. And then the next 2 games, he was nowhere to be seen despite playing pretty much every snap. He's wildly inconsistent. He spends way too much time on the ground, and not because he's the one making the tackle. His consistency on a down-to-down, series-to-series, and game-to-game definitely needs coaching. If Rod Marinelli is Rod Marinelli still the defensive line coach? If he was, he's the guy that you want coaching Marvin Wilson to get the best out of him. Marvin Wilson's going to be probably taken at the end of day 2, so around that, in around pick 99. I have Alim Mcneil a full 2 rounds ahead of him. I have Marvin Wilson as my 11th rated defensive tackle.
11th, really that low? Oof.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he's again. If we talked about Alim Mcneil not having pass rush upside, Marvin Wilson has less.
Yeah, just because that kind of adds to the confusion about Marvin Wilson, honestly, just because, like you said, there's just the tape was great in 2018, 2019, but 2020 was just
fell off a cliff.
Yeah, but to me, it's could it be the coaching issue? Could it be the situation where now you put him in a better defense, or that one that's more suitable to him? Can he get that? Could you unlock good Marvin Wilson from 2018, 2019 in the right situation?
You could, but it's a lot to ask, especially if you're going to be picking him in the top 100. I have a lot less issue picking him in round 4 than I would in round 3, because it's a lot less costly to miss on a round 4 pick than a round 3.
For sure, and that's also why, again, if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, look at defensive tackle. Even
Alim Mcneil should be your
McNeil
guy.
or bust. Alim Mcneil on day 2 or bust, and hopefully in round 3, I've seen him ranked. I've seen him in some mock drafts go in round 2, but I'm really much set on Alim Mcneil. But now there is another, obviously, position that has to be mentioned on day 2. I mean, there's a lot of positions, but if the Cowboys just happen to go Kyle Pitts or Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell, in other words, offense at 10 overall, then that would mean that they definitely now have to be in the market for a cornerback. And here's the interesting thing in looking at this cornerback class, because to me, there are really good slot guys. Asante Samuel Jr., Elijah Molden, good slot guys. And also, speaking of lineage, in like Asante Samuel Jr.,
Yep.
his father was the cornerback in New England, and was it Atlanta also,
No, Philly.
or Philly? Oh yeah, of course, Philly. Yeah, how can I forget? Anyway,
Mm.
yeah. So what? So how would you take a very good slot corner over over an average boundary corner? Because typically a boundary corner is a higher valued position than a slot corner, at least historically. So would you, but maybe in today's NFL now with 3 wide receivers or multi-receiver sets on the field, that increases the value of the slot corner. But what would you rather take, an average boundary corner or a good slot corner?
I think as long as you have a good corner on the field, it doesn't matter whether there's a slot or on the outside. Especially depending on matchup, your slot corner might be going up against a number one wide receiver in that particular week. You know, if you're going up against New Orleans, you know that Michael Thomas is going to be lining up in the slot most of the time. If you're going up against Larry Fitzgerald anytime in the last 5 years, you're lining him up in the slot every single down. So as long as you need your slot corners to be just as good coverage wise as your boundaries, because they're going to be matched up against tight ends, they're going to be matched up against running backs, going to be matched up against your smaller or just your better route running wide receivers. This class, like you said, it does have very good slot corners. You mentioned Asante Samuel, Elijah Molden. I would also throw in Aaron Robinson out of UCF. He's another really good slot corner.
Kelvin Joseph.
Kelvin Joseph is a bit of an inside-outside type of guy. I love Kelvin Joseph. Or if you want to go by his rap name, Boss Man Fat, which is another reason why he should be drafted high. Interception machine, led the SEC in interceptions this year. Spent a year at LSU before transferring to Kentucky. Came out as a redshirt sophomore, so there's a lot of growing that needs to be done with him. High upside, really low floor though. Which when you're the Cowboys, you really need someone that has a higher floor. If you're looking outside corners on day 2, I would say that you can look at Eric Stokes out of Georgia. Has a bit of that JC Horn kind of can be too grabby. Fantastic athlete. Ran much faster than I expected. He had some stiffness in his movements in the 2019 film. A lot of that was gone in 2020. There's also, and you're gonna love this name. I love names that are really hard to say because it makes my co-host
Fidu
struggle.
Melifonwu.
Yes, I'm 6'2", 210 pounds. The younger brother of Obi Melifonwu, the safety out of UConn a couple of years ago. Much better prospect than Obi.
Hopefully he doesn't have the same NFL career as Obi.
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 games that Syracuse had. Syracuse was not good this year. They were a 1 or a 2 win season. However, up against North Carolina, which had a very high powered offense, he shut down De'Ami Brown, who's probably going to go at the end of day 2, early day 3, and then against Liberty, who has a potential, one of the many quarterbacks that are being listed as early quarterback 1 by people of the draft Twitter community. Malik Willis was completely afraid to throw Melifonwu's way, completely just did not test him the entire game. It was Patrick Surtain levels of boring because he was not tested. They did not throw his way once, and it was because they weren't confident enough that they could beat him in a one-on-one. He's really good. He's a fantastic athlete. The NFL may be a little lower on him than the draft community is. He could go anywhere from middle of round 2 to even, round 4, maybe even round 5, depending on how NFL teams like him. That sometimes if you have an older brother that didn't pan out, it can affect negatively on you. So I really hope that Obi's career arc does not affect Ifitu's draft stock. He's one of my favorite corners in this class. He's my 6th ranked corner. I have him ahead of guys like Kelvin Joseph, Elijah Molden, Asante Samuel. I think he's a really high upside kid.
Really?
I
So
think
that's
he's really
what
high
I was going to ask you. Where does so you have Melifonwu ahead of Samuel Molden? What about compared to Eric Stokes?
I have Stokes as my top 6. Actually, I can read to you everyone I just mentioned in order because I pretty much went through my top 10 right there.
And also, sorry, one guy we have still not mentioned yet was is Newsome, Greg Newsome.
Yeah, Greg Newsome's my fourth ranked corner. He's going to be gone.
He's a
Realistic.
first round guy, obviously.
Yeah, no. He's going to be gone by at the very latest Tennessee. I could see him going at Arizona at 16. He's had a meteoric rise this year. He was fantastic. But again, he missed some time with injury as a freshman. So, never know whether those medicals are cleared, especially this year where there's a lot of uncertainty because there wasn't a combine for medical rechecks. But yeah, so I have it Surtain, Farley, Horn. Those are my first rounders. I have 4 through 9 are all second rounders. So that's Newsome, Eric Stokes. These are just how I graded them. I think that Newsome's going to go in round 1, like I said. Newsome, Stokes, Melifonwu, Asante Samuel, Elijah Molden, Aaron Robinson in round 2. Kelvin Joseph is my 10th. He's very beginning of round 3. And then 2 more outside guys in case you wait on the third round. Tyson Campbell out of Georgia and Israel Mukuamu out of South Carolina, who's 6'4" and 212 pounds playing outside corner.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go just that alone speaks. Richard Sherman, like you don't want to go up against that. I mean,
his
like,
best
game,
move
though.
Yeah, he's a little stiff. He's a little stiff of an athlete. That's why he's graded low. But I mean, we talked about quarterbacks that maybe got undeserved hype earlier. Jake Fromm last year, one of the main killer games for him that killed his draft stock was South Carolina because Israel Mukuamu picked him off 3 times and returned 1 for a touchdown.
Yeah, and with that being said, there's actually another corner I want to say because moving into now safety, I think was it Kelvin Joe? There's a guy who I mentioned that had good ball skills but not good coverage skills.
Yeah, I could say that.
Was it Paulson Adebo?
Yeah, Paulson Adebo. He's also had some injury issues as well. He hasn't taken a snap in a year and a half. He opted out this year. He got injured in 2018. Could have come out after 2019, but had just a really rough year recovering from it. And opted out this year. Just he's a good athlete. He's a better athlete. He tested better than I thought he would, but because he tested better than I thought he would, was he using that extra time off to prepare for the combine? So one of the things is when you're watching a whole bunch of film and someone pops up, athletically, you have to go, okay, does someone that ran a 4.4 at wide receiver play like they ran a 4.4? Case in point, Alshon Jeffrey, when he was coming out, Alshon Jeffrey dropped 15 pounds going into the combine so that he weighed in under 200 pounds and would run a 4.4. Alshon Jeffrey, no, he doesn't play that fast, and he played at 215. So you always have to kind of make sure who's actually near their playing weight, who is slimming down so that they can. And again, if they run slower than you expect because of what you filmed, then you have to go back and check the tape. If they run faster, you have to go back and check it. You need to make sure that there's synergy, and if there's not, then there's a problem. And Paulson Adebo is one of those guys. He's had a good pre-draft process because he tested better than I thought he would. But again, I'm just not in love with the coverage skills. He did get picked apart in 2019. There's, injury concerns with him. He's got a lot that leans towards maybe not having the sustainable career that we thought he might have 2 years ago.
And also, and I did mention that, would you think that he's a better option maybe at safety than corner? Could he be a guy that would convert to safety? It's possible.
It is possible. Especially in the secondary, I'm not a big fan of messing with guys' positions because, I mean, an example of someone where we all thought seamless transition even from one position to the other in college this year was Ohio State's Shaun Wade. Everybody coming into the year thought that Shaun Wade was going to be the next first round corner out of Ohio State. Everyone that watched had him better than Damon Arnett, who went in round 1. And Shaun Wade was a dominant slot corner, and then they moved him outside, and it was an absolute disaster. And now no one's touching him before day 3.
I mean, but he's still a decent safety prospect, though, is he not?
Yeah. With Shaun Wade, as long as he stays on the inside, you're fine. He's getting exposed on the outside because he doesn't, when you're playing a slot corner, you're going to get a little bit more help. This year, he wasn't physical enough, and he was looking for help. And I mean, he got exposed by a guy that was deemed a go back to school grade at Penn State, and Jahan Dotson. So, I mean, his Penn State game was some really bad film, and the Clemson, the Clemson game exposed him a lot.
So let's go up the board a little bit with safeties here now.
Let's go safeties.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of like, again, there's not a clear. I feel like, look, safeties anyways. They're corners that don't play corner well, that aren't athletic enough to play corner, so they changed to safety in college, at least historically. But with that being said, there's still like not a number one safety on this board per se. You look at guys like Trevon Merrick, Richie Grant, Javon Holland, Jamar Johnson. Where would you rank those four, or let's say your top five safeties, especially on day two?
All right, so I don't have a first round grade on a safety. This is not the best class in terms of star talent. It's a lot of day two, early day three guys. So I have it Trayvon Merrick and out of TCU, and Javon Holland, Canada's own out of Oregon. I will always claim him as being Canadian. His dad played for the BC Lions. He was born in Vancouver. He's Canadian. Doesn't matter that he grew up and spent his entire life in Inglewood, California. He's Canadian in my book. Richie Grant from UCF. He's my third ranked. We're getting into round three guys. Talanoa Hufanga out of USC is a fantastic kind of do it all. He's one of those jack of all trades, master of none type safeties, which those guys still have a very high ceiling as long as you have someone that's willing to coach them up to be, a little bit better at one thing than another, so that, you have a bit more of a specialty. And then Andre Cisco out of Syracuse, who I've comped to a poor man's Malik Hooker. Turnover machine, can be very hit or miss. I've heard him referred to, one of my colleagues over at Blue Chip Scouting, Tyler Fornes, has referred to him as a ball magnet instead of a ball hawk. The ball just kind of finds him. He doesn't really actively go out and get it, which is, again, why I said poor man's Malik Hooker. And he's also coming off of an ACL tear. So there's going to be some questions about the recovery there. But one of our personal favorites at Blue Chip Scouting is the other TCU safety, and that's our Darius Washington. My boss, Tyler Browning, he has our Darius Washington as his number one safety. I think that our Darius Washington is probably still going to be available at the end of round three because of size concerns. He is 5'8" and under 200 pounds. My pro comparison for him is just Mighty Mouse. He is very small, but he will hit you. He will remind you that he's hit you, and he's also going to intercept the ball quite a bit. Playmaking skills, heavy hitter. Think he's got a little bit of slot versatility as well. But again, the size is just going to be his problem, which it shouldn't be, but it is.
And also, so that, like, just with that whole discussion about, you have Merrick. I think you said it's like Trevon Merrick at the top, and then it's like Richie
Merrick,
Grant.
Holland, Grant, Hufanga, and then Cisco.
So why would people say that Richie Grant should be the number one safety, and then Trevon Merrick is more like the number three or the number four safety, and then Darius Washington? I know also some people who have him as their best safety, right? Obviously the size, I guess that answers that. The lack of the fact that he's 5'7", 5'8" is what pushes him down to some people's fourth round grade. But why would you put Trevon Merrick over Richie Grant, and why would some other scouts put it the other way around?
So for me, because again, I started watching a lot of these guys over the summer, so I had a lot of their 2019 film to watch as well. Richie Grant had a rather pedestrian or average 2019, and then from what we can find of his 2020 film, finding all 22 for UCF's defense was an absolute nightmare this year. But it was night and day. Played a lot better, but Trayvon Merrick has been one of the top safeties in the country for the last 2 years. Has the ability to just shut down an entire third of the field. Can play single high, can come up and run support, more well-rounded, but again, single high, he's your guy. And again, just consistency. 2 straight years of dominant film. That's going to speak louder to me than 1 year of pretty pedestrian or even below average film. And then, one really, really solid year. Another guy that's talked about it potentially having a bit of a draft day rise because of his athleticism is Texas's Caden Stearns. This is everything that went wrong with Grant Delpit over his career at LSU magnified to 10, because whereas Grant Delpit was fantastic as a freshman, played okay as a sophomore, and then looked almost completely undraftable as a junior, Caden Stearns had a great freshman year, and then the last 2 years he's been injury prone. He's had effort concerns, and he's coming out of Texas, which is a program that does not develop talent well. So I personally have him as a fifth. I don't think that the effort's there. I have a real hard time evaluating safeties where the question is, well, when they turn, where their selling point is when they turn, the switch to on, then they're good. But if you have to turn your switch on, how often a season, how often a game are you going to have to, okay, now I'm going to try on this play. I want you trying all the time.
And you want your safeties to be like those gritty, either ball hawks or guys that are willing tacklers, are willing to have high motors and willing to like you said, to help out other corners and help out linebackers and help out in the run game as well. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, though, who would you say in this class is the best free safety?
Best free safety? Where I don't need
you were to tell them if you were to say which one would you want in your defense to play single high, who would you trust the most?
Either Trayvon Merrick or Andre Cisco, because they're going to come down with amazing interception numbers. Cisco's going to be, like I said, he's going to be the type of safety where he could get you five or six picks. The problem is you just don't want him tackling. But if you want a single high that can tackle and can actually make plays outside of just creating turnovers, and it's Trayvon Merrick.
And that's kind of and free safeties, or those single high safeties, are a little bit more a dime a dozen than box safeties, because box safeties nowadays are essentially a cross between linebackers and nickel corners and Sam linebackers. Like you can easily go from linebacker. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but you can easier go from an athletic linebacker to box or strong safety than you can from, let's say, linebacker or even maybe corner to free safety.
Yeah, well, you're not going to put a former linebacker in at safety. It's
obviously you're not going to put one at free safety.
There actually is a player in this class that he played linebacker in college, but I think his best position at the NFL is safety, and that's Tavante Beckett out of Marshall. Now you're talking a late day 3, potentially an undrafted kid. But the reason I have him is because he's not the greatest athlete. I think he could be more of a box safety, but he's going to get eaten alive if you have him play linebacker at 5'10" and 213 pounds. Whereas if you put him as more of a box safety, that keeps him a lot cleaner, allows him to make more plays.
Yeah, and that's but still, like in terms of the position value, I still find that free safe, you can find good strong safeties or box safeties later on the draft, whereas those true single high free safety guys are usually gone by round 3.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Trayvon Merrick, I would agree with you on Trayvon Merrick, at least from what I've seen and what I've read up on Trayvon Merrick, that I like Trayvon Merrick as the best safety in the class and would also consider him on day 2. But now let's talk a little bit more generically here, because we've been talking a lot about the Cowboys, of course, and you're an Eagles fan. I know you don't like doing that very much, so you can involve the Eagles on this one. And of course, thank you so much again, Mike.
No
we're going to finish with this segment here now. Offense, because we haven't spoken much about offense, at least since our discussion on the 10 overall pick. Now, if Waddle, Smith, or Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase were available to Dallas at 10 or Philly at 14, right? 14?
12,
excuse me. Yeah. If they were available to Dallas at 10 or the Eagles at 12, obviously, like, Dallas would be.
I don't want any of them going to Dallas. I'm just going to say that. I don't want
the Eagles would, but the Eagles would definitely take one of them if they fell to 12. But Dallas would be hard pressed to say no if one of their only options was if Sewell was gone, Slater was gone, Pitts was gone, Surtain was gone, Horn was gone, and they're left with Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase. Well, the Cowboys don't need a receiver, but those players are just really, really good receivers.
Yeah, like,
so you'd
Jerry's
going to
do what Jerry's going to do. Like,
yeah. But let me ask you this now. That's at 10. But I feel like there's also a little bit of a drop-off from there to guys like Elijah Moore, Kadarius Toney, and Rashad Bateman.
There is.
Yeah.
Those are all more. Rashad Bateman's my 4th rated wide receiver. I think he's going to come off the board somewhere between Washington and Baltimore. That's his sweet spot. Then we're going to talk about Elijah Moore possibly sneaking into round 1, Kadarius Toney, end of round 1, early day 2, and then Terrace Marshall out of LSU, kind of to round off that whole tier. Realistically, from what I've read and from what I've heard, the odds of the Eagles being able to get any of the top 3 wide receivers in the class or Kyle Pitts without trading up is very low, because the Giants are apparently absolutely head over heels for Devontae Smith. And as an Eagles fan, that's still not happy with the Jalen Reagor pick a year later. That's very upsetting. However, there are still
Over
a lot
Justin
of.
Jefferson.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, with the Eagles at 12, even if they don't go wide receiver, this is going to be a long-term rebuild for the Eagles anyways. We're looking at 2-3 years minimum. And unfortunately, Howie Roseman's probably going to be the GM for all of those years. I have to look at 12. It's not going to be someone like Micah Parsons because Howie doesn't value linebackers. It's going to be on offense. Offensive tackle is a position to watch for Philadelphia. There have been reports for 2 years now that Audrey Dillard, as early as his rookie year, the team was kind of very much out on him. They value Jordan Mailata more than they value Audrey Dillard. And Jordan Mailata was a former rugby player that they picked in round 7. So what does that say about their number 21 pick from 2019? Doesn't exactly speak volumes for him. If Rashawn Slater makes it to 12, I think he's the pick. If Slater's gone and none of the top wideouts are there, maybe a JC Horn is the pick because the Eagles still have Avonte Maddox starting at outside corner, which is not a recipe for success either. So JC Horn's a potential pick there. The last potential option I could see is if Horn's gone. I think if Horn's gone, maybe Surtain's there. If Slater's gone as well, they might trade back again, maybe to a team trying to trade up for a quarterback. Let's say Mac Jones makes it to 12. Hey, New England, we'll trade back to 16. Christian Darrisaw of Virginia Tech is one of my personal guys, which of course means that Howie Roseman's going to hate him. But I think that he can come in, start day one. This has been my guy since May of last year covering the draft. This is one of, I've gotten to know him as a kid. He's a very good dude. Just really loves to hang out. Doesn't get into any off-field issues. Just, comes home from practice, plays Madden. He's just a very level-headed kid, loves football, loves just running over people. Came from a very good offensive line, very good coached offensive line at Virginia Tech, despite the fact the offense wasn't that great. And I mean, in the run game, the Eagles want to run a little bit more because they have Jalen Hurts and they also have Miles Sanders. Yeah, I couldn't think of his name for a second. Miles Sanders in the backfield. Christian Darrisaw was sending dudes flying this year. It looked like Mekhi Becton in a Virginia Tech uniform, but just smaller because he's 6'5" and 325.
But the Eagles, they're still looking for a long-term replacement for Jason Peters, and that's what Audrey Dillard was supposed to be.
Yeah, if we have to try to ask Jason Peters to come back and play left tackle at 39 years old, I'm going to have issues.
With that being said, so that's offensive tackle, at least. But I also want to know, in the second round, what offensive players would the Cowboys or the Eagles have to pick if they're available at 44, or in Philly's case, I guess 50?
No, we're earlier than that.
Oh yeah, earlier because
we're like 38. We're at 37. I think.
37, yeah. So what players would you absolutely have to select at 37 for the Eagles, 44 for the Cowboys, or 75 for the Cowboys, or 99? I'm talking strictly offense, receivers, linemen, maybe even tight end, maybe even running back. Who would, if they're on the board, if they fall all the way down to 44 or in the 37 and 75 or 99, who would the Cowboys or the Eagles have to take?
When we're talking about the Cowboys and offense, they don't necessarily have to, but again, if we're talking, absolutely have to pick an offensive lineman, I could see the Cowboys going for an interior offensive lineman. It's not the sexiest pick, but hey, if Elijah Vera Tucker somehow makes it out of round 1 from USC, again, tackle, guard, flexibility. Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma. If they're looking for a long-term center, Wyatt Davis, or Alex Leatherwood, another tackle / guard out of Alabama. Wyatt Davis is just a power right guard where you just, you want Zeke, back, regaining form. Great. Give him a road grader at right guard that can clear some space for him. Outside of that, really, Dallas doesn't need to be looking offense in round 2. Eagles need everything. They seemingly can't have enough picks this year. So in round 2 for the Eagles, if wide receiver is not an option there, I'd like to see them go after someone like a Terrace Marshall. The Eagles decided to triple down on fast wide receivers that don't have great hands. Terrace Marshall is a 6'3", 205-pound possession wideout that can go up and get the ball. It's everything you thought you were getting in AJ Arcega-Whiteside, except he's actually good. If the Eagles decide that they're gonna move on from Zach Ertz and they can get a trade, maybe later on day 2 they can get someone like Tommy Tremble at tight end to back up Dallas Goedert, kind of a raw, unproven developmental tight end that can be a tight end too. I don't think Pat Freiermuth is in is in the discussion. By the way, Freiermuth, another potential tight end target for the Cowboys on day 2, was called Baby Gronk at Penn State. I've comped him to Greg Olson, the former Panthers tight end, Bears, and wherever else he played. I think he played for like 4 different teams.
Seahawks,
that was the one. In terms of other positions, the Eagles don't need a running back, so I don't think that they're going to go that in round 2. Round 3 for the Eagles, if they decide they really want to go with more speed, they could see Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. Yes, he's 24 years old. No, I don't care. Yes, he's only 5'9". No, I don't care. Yes, he did go to Western Michigan, which is in the MAC. No, I don't care. Kid is an absolute monster. Tore apart my favorite defensive backs down at the Senior Bowl. Was just completely unguardable the entire time there. Or if they want to go with another big-bodied target that plays bigger than his size. He's only 6'1", only about 195 pounds, but a good route runner that can go up and get the ball. That's Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State. There are a ton of really good wide receivers. You want a good red zone threat, De'Ami Brown out of North Carolina, a good route runner from the slot. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC. You see my point when I say this is one of the deepest wide receiver classes. Those are just guys I have in round 2. And then, of course, you have Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore. I would love either of them on the Eagles. One guy I would love the Eagles to go after, or 2 guys I'd like in kind of late day 2, early day 3, depending on where they go. Nico Collins out of Michigan, big-bodied jump ball target. Or Seth Williams out of Auburn. Again, another big body, go up, get the ball. If the Cowboys decide they need more speed on day 3 at wide receiver, because of course they do, we could always see them trade Michael Gallup, which would mean they'd need more receiving help anyways. I'll give you 2 names that the Cowboys fans should familiarize themselves with. If you want someone that you manufacture touches for, that's Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. He has Olympic track level speed. He is that fast. Just wasn't given the ball a lot well with the Tigers because of poor offensive planning, terrible quarterback play, and just everything not going his way. He's going to be a guy where you can use him as a kick returner, just manufacture touches. And then I'll finish on a high note with one of my favorite players. I hope to God he doesn't end up in a Cowboys uniform. It's North Texas's Jalen Darden. He's 5'9", about 185 pounds, one of the best slot route runners in the entire class. He put up 18 touchdowns this year, and he didn't play in the last game and a half of the season. He had 2 or 3 games in a row where he put up 4 touchdowns. Not like 4 touchdowns in 3 games. I mean 4 touchdowns followed by 4 touchdowns followed by 4 touchdowns.
So these are guys, obviously, that if you get them the ball, like, you got to figure it out. And honestly, I really like the sound of that, like, because you've seen Tyreek Hill, you've seen just plenty of guys that if they're just, I mean, no one's as fast as Tyreek
if you want to have fun watching a wide receiver film that like isn't one of the top guys in the class, just look up Jalen Darden versus SMU. It is filthy. It is just unfair. It should actually be X-rated on YouTube.
Or even like Cole Beasley. I mean, if you're talking, again, NFL guys, he's more quick than fast.
Yeah, but... no. Jalen Darden is both quick and fast.
Yeah, he's just quick if you combine the 2 together, I don't care how tall or how small you are, just if you can do that and not and catch the ball when it's thrown at you because of how wide open you are and not drop it, then that's like...
Yeah, I spoke with
you have room in any offense for that.
Yeah. I spoke with Connor Rogers from Bleacher Report about Jalen Darden a couple of months ago, and if you watched the impact that Darnell Mooney coming out of Tulane had for Chicago this year, and he fell to round 5, Jalen Darden is this year's Darnell Mooney, except the NFL's not going to make that mistake on him. He's probably going at the end of day 3, or sorry, the end of day 2.
So I have one more question for you, Mike. So
no worries.
We're in the show with a prediction.
Yep.
Who goes to the Eagles at 12 and who goes to the Cowboys at 10?
Cowboys, I'm going to say it's Patrick Surtain II. And with the Eagles, geez, at this point, it could be anyone. It really could be anyone. I don't trust the front office at all. They need corner help desperately, and then they can fix wide receiver on day 2. So I'm gonna say that at 12, it's JC Horn to the Eagles.
You heard it here first. You got Patrick Surtain to the Cowboys, JC Horn going to 12 at the Eagles. And yeah, that's pretty much all we got here on this Langer at the Mic NFL Draft edition. Of course, the NFL Draft is next Thursday, a week from tonight. And as usual, thank you so much.
You can find me on draft night covering the draft.
Yes, if definitely go to Mike's stream at Blue Chip Scouting, and you can follow him at MikeH_draft on Twitter. Again, Mike is one of the hardest working draft guys that I know of, and I'm so happy I know him personally. And thank you once again, Mike, so much for joining our show today. And as usual, if you enjoy Langer at the Mic, then give us a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, and you can follow me, Mike Langer, on YouTube, on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Mike Langer for all 3. I'll include that in the description below, and of course, I'll include Mike's information and Mike's tags on the in the description below. But this has been a draft show edition of Langer at the Mic. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I look forward to seeing you again next time.